It has been exactly 1 year today since the Mueller probe began. Happy birthday, baby. It has cost taxpayers millions of dollars, but what has it gotten us so far? A few low-level indictments, no proof of actual collusion with Russia, and a very divided country. And President Trump, well, he's not happy about it. This morning he tweeted, "Congratulations, America. We are now into the second year of the greatest witch hunt in American history. Still no collusion and no obstruction. The only collusion was that done by Democrats who were unable to win an election despite the spending of far more money." And now we've learned Robert Mueller's team has told the president's lawyers that they don't even plan to try and indict the president. So why is this still going on? The president's critics say it's because there are a lot of unanswered questions. Among them, a new report that Donald Trump Jr. made several phone calls, I say, before and after his infamous Trump Tower meeting. The left-wing media is calling this very mysterious. Why? Because he called a blocked number. Well, if that ain't a smoking gun, I don't know from guns or smoke. But seriously, what does that prove? Nothing. The president's longtime personal attorney, Michael Cohen, also appears to have had some shady financial deals. That looks more and more like a freelance operation and doesn't really prove a lot about collusion. His former campaign manager, the filthy, scummy Paul Manafort, he could be in some trouble with the feds. But that also does not appear to involve the president. So why, after a full year, are we still on this merry-go-round? Are you dizzy yet? Let me bring in former Trump campaign manager Corey Lewandowski. He was still a big part of the campaign at the time of that Trump Tower meeting, and he recently joined Vice President Mike Pence's Great America PAC as a senior strategist. Welcome back, Corey.
Well, thanks for having me.
So let's talk a little bit about the state of the Mueller probe. There are still many eager people on the left who hope that even though apparently someone from Robert Mueller's team told Rudy Giuliani that there would be no indictment per Justice Department guidelines, they're hoping that still means that there could be some sort of a criminal referral to Congress, possibly for impeachment. What do you think about all that?
Look, I think the American people are very tired of this long investigation into nothing. I believe the Mueller team has found very clearly there was no collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russians. There was no coordination. There was nothing there that impacted the election other than Hillary Clinton taking $5 million, giving it to an MI6 spy who went out, gave it to the Russians to create a false dossier, which allowed that false dossier to be used in a FISA application to spy on an American citizen on domestic soil in clear violation of the Fourth Amendment. That's the only collusion that took place in the campaign. It took place from the losing campaign, the Clinton campaign. They've admitted they spent the $5 million, but yet there's still no investigation into that.
All right, so what would you do differently now? Knowing what you know about presidential politics, not only on the campaign trail, but in the White House, and the parameters that every president must face, what would you have done differently on the campaign?
Well, look, on the campaign, very candidly, I wouldn't have brought Paul Manafort on board. Paul is really a big part of the problem that we're faced with because of his overseas dealings from 10 or 11 or 12 years ago, and that's what he's in trouble for. Paul Manafort is not in trouble for anything related to the campaign, but he continuously gets dragged into the campaign conversation unfairly to the president for work that he did overseas in 2005 and 2006. And he and his colleague, Rick Gates, were indicted for work that they did, which had nothing to do with the campaign. So if I could go back and change one thing, and maybe I'm a little biased on this, I would make sure that Paul and Rick weren't part of the campaign. All
right. So based on what you see coming out of the Mueller report, and we still don't know a lot. I mean, there have not been a ton of leaks. There has been a lot of speculation. There have been drips in the New York Times and Washington Post occasionally. The Mueller team has said don't believe the so-called leaks that you read about in the media. And I asked Brett Baer this last night. If the report is vague, it could be interpreted very differently by a Republican-controlled House versus a Democratic-controlled House. What do you think the impact will be on the president if there is, in fact, a vague report and Democrats take back control of the House of Representatives?
Well, I think we have to worry about when the timing of the report may be made public. So, from what we understand and what Drudge is reporting tonight, the Labor Day should be the end, or that's what is potentially being reported of the investigation. If that's the case, when does the report get made to the Department of Justice? When is there a report to Congress? And when do the American people get to see what I already know, which there was no collusion?
I hope we do get to see whatever is in that report, certainly.
Well, I hope so, too. But my concern is that it gets written in such a vague manner, and it comes out in October that says there was potentially something there, that it impacts the outcome of an election for the midterms. I think that would be very disappointing for the American people. But what I know is there was no collusion, and that's what the report should say. I think it should come out as soon as possible, and I think the American people should have access to it.
No, but I think you're right, because if it is vague, it can be interpreted to anyone's political whim, and, that further divides the country, and you have to wonder if that's a consideration. But I want you to hang on just for a second, Corey, because there's a new report that claims Inspector General Michael Horowitz, he's the one who's been overlooking the DOJ, he's found evidence of potential criminal misconduct in the FBI and DOJ's handling of the Clinton investigation, and that prosecutions could follow. This, according to a tweet from conservative commentator Paul Sperry. Do you know anything more about this tweet and the implication that there could, in fact, be criminal proceedings and there could be a criminal bent to Inspector General Horowitz's report?
I don't have any more information than what you're reporting, but I do think it's important to know that the IG has issued multiple reports already asking for criminal referrals, whether it's been Andrew McCabe or other members of the FBI. And if this is the case, if this has actually been referred to Utah, to the U.S. Attorney in Utah for a criminal prosecution, it is a step in the right direction. The American people should be very happy with that, because there is no question in my mind federal laws were broken as it relates to the Clinton email investigation and what was done to cover that up. We know that Jim Comey released a report before he even finished interviewing the individuals, and Jim Comey and Andrew McCabe, who are now at war with each other, are pointing the finger. One of those two people, if not both of them, are going to be criminally prosecuted for the work that they did on that.
Well, we will see. There's also Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. We have to wait and see if that is in fact true, and how the DOJ and FBI could have been compromised during that investigation. Last question, Corey. We've run out of time. Did you join the vice president's political action committee to make your former boss jealous?
Well, look, Kennedy, I did it because I love the president. The president asked me to join. You know that. I would never do anything. I'm an unapologetic Trump supporter. I joined at the president's request. He said, Corey, go over there, help the vice president raise money so that we can give it to candidates who are supporting the Trump-Pence agenda. I'm going to do that tomorrow in Indiana with the vice president. But this is directly at the request of the president of the United States, because I was at his super PAC, and now I've moved over to the vice president's PAC to help them raise money to get more candidates elected who are supporting the Trump-Pence agenda.